everybody? We are Rough Draft Research. You are the audience, and together we are on a quest for Dynasty domination. How's it going over there, Daniel?
Ooh, juggling life, baby. Living it, loving it. Pretty
Yeah.
good, man. Yourself?
Oh, it's all right, doing the old college thing. I know you're on call tonight, so we're both kind of got our heads in different spaces, but we're here to talk ball, not talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So
Forget life. Not
so
important.
I spoke a lot last week. Hopefully that was some content that you all enjoyed. Uh but this week I don't want to take as much time. So I just quickly put together a little comparison for you guys of the 2022 rookie class and the 2023 rookie class, just the guys that were taken in the first round of our For the Belt league. And just kind of wanted to compare like where these picks were at in 2 different years. So just getting into that real quickly, the 1-1 for 2022 was Brees Hall in our league, which made sense. So by week 8, he was the RB12. His points per game was 16.4. He got hurt week 7. He would have been the RB6 if you kind of averaged out his 16.4 into the next game. 463 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 200 through the air. Having a great, awesome season. Everybody remembers until he got hurt, and it looks like he's picking that up now that he's back healthy. For 2023, that 1-1 was Bijan Robinson. So we had another running back. Easy to compare here. He's the RB11 on the year, 13.4 points per game, so a little less in the points per game category. Right around actually 3 more yards than Brees Hall had. 466 on the ground, but he also had like 12 more carries, so it averages out a little bit. But he has 2 receiving touchdowns instead of the 4 that Brees Hall had on the ground. And Bijan only has 1 on the ground, 2 through the air. So a little lacking on touchdowns. But outside that that the Bijan game where he was sick and they held him out, except for the 1 carry, he hasn't scored below 10 points. But his best 2 games were weeks 1 and 2. And we haven't really seen him go off like Brees Hall did in like week 5 last year when Brees Hall had 27.7 points. But to me, they're on par for like what you would expect for the 1-1. Like that's the guy that you want to use, or at least in like a single QB league, that's usually going to be a running back that you think is immediately going to start going. And both these guys were just on the edge of the top 10. So that's pretty impressive, considering the rookie kind of landscape sometimes.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're so close on yardage.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Brees took a little bit of time to heat up there, but once he
Yeah,
got there, he was smoking.
yeah, he was going off once he got there, but those first few weeks he didn't really get the usage that Bijan did at all. I mean, so Brees Hall had 80 carries by week 7 when he went down, and Bijan has 92. So like,
Okay. Okay.
so they didn't have as the same amount of usage. And we all know that Bijan's been even annoyingly unused. So like, um, but anyway, moving on to the 1-2. Another pair of running backs here for 2022. It was Kenneth Walker the third. He was the RB22 at this point last year. 12.6 points per game, which is pretty respectable. But he was starting to heat up because he had a total of 87.9 points, but 75 of those points had come in weeks 5 to 8. So he was really starting to heat up there towards the end. Really didn't start off too hot. Similarly to our boy Jahmyr Gibbs, who was the 1-2 in the 2023 draft. Right now, he's the RB18, has a total of 96 points, but 58 of those points have come in weeks 7 and 8. So again, heating up here. These two guys got a little bit slower of a start. Seems took a little longer for them to get ramped up. But it seems like they're taking the workloads over now deeper into the season. We'll see with Gibbs, obviously with Montgomery coming back. But Walker continued that throughout the end of the year until he got hurt. So, it just took him a little longer to get started than say Bijan and Brees Hall, but it seems like they're going to end up being kind of in that same market. They're just slightly behind him, like a dozen spots or whatever. So pretty interesting there. The 1-3, we got our first pair of comparable wide receivers in Drake London in 2022. By this point, he was the wide receiver 38. his points per game was just under 10. He had 49 targets, 30 receptions, 346 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In 2023, that pick went to JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's the current wide receiver 56. Points per game is right at 8. But both his touchdowns, which he has 2 of, have come in the last 2 weeks. He's got 209 yards and 23 receptions. He's starting to heat up as well. Both these receivers were the top or the first receiver taken in their respective NFL draft classes, as well as our drafts. But the difference here is that London was leading the team in targets in week 8, while JSN is currently 3rd on his team. So it's just kind of a bit of a different comparison there. It seemed like Drake London had 49 targets. Jackson Smith and Jigga only has 36 through week 8. Just kind of a different workload, but we have seen the past couple days or past couple weeks, JSN starting to heat up pretty spicy.
Yes, dude. I don't know, man. I don't know. I expected so much more.
Yeah. Both these guys kind of, and that's
like,
yeah. So far, these comparisons have been pretty close. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like,
keep going like this.
No.
Well,
So we finally get to our first kind of weird one. So in 2022, the 1-4 was Treylon Burks. And at this point last year, he hadn't had a double-digit fantasy game yet. He had 10 catches for 129 yards. The 1-4 in 2023 was Jordan Addison. So we have our first pretty different here because Jordan Addison is the wide receiver 11. He's basically at 16 points per game right now. He's only had one game with less than 10 points, and it was that weird 0 week he had in week 4. 36 catches, 482 yards with 7 touchdowns already. It's a huge difference after, as you pointed out, like similarly guys kind of going for the first 3. But Addison's just been super hot. The highest scoring rookie receiver that was taken in the first round. If you don't, obviously Puka is in there, but of the first round guys, he's the highest scoring one. Addison's 2 targets away from tying Treylon Burks' season-long target number. So, like, they're just not on the same level. And similarly, the 1-5 is kind of the same, except flip it. So in 2022, Garrett Wilson was the 1-5. At this point, he was the wide receiver 32. He had 30 points in week 2, 60 targets already, 34 catches, 429 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Compare that to the 1-5 of Quentin Johnston, 21 targets, 12 receptions, 114 yards. He's the wide receiver 108. Stark contrast here, except like I said, 2022 takes the shine. Wilson hadn't quite hit the heights of like his rookie season yet, but the signs were there. Obviously, the 30 points in week 2 or whatever, and he had like a 17-point week in there. But Johnston, to his credit, had his best game this week. He got over 10 points for the first time. So hopefully he can start to heat up down the road. Moving on, I'm going to speed up a little quicker here. 1-6 was Chris Olave. He was off to a super hot start. Wide receiver 19, 15 points per game, basically. 63 targets, which is the highest of anybody in this list that I'm going to talk about. 37 receptions, 547 yards, 2 touchdowns. In 2023, that pick went to Dalton Kincaid, though. So this is our first like non-linear position matchup. So Kincaid is the tight end 15 right now, points per game right around 9. But he's had back-to-back weeks of 15 plus ever since Dawson Knox went down 7 or 8, or week 7 and 8 there. 34 targets for 30 catches, which is just an insane catch rate. And he only has 1 touchdown on the year. So Olave looked like the real deal from the start, just racking up those target numbers. But I also think Kincaid, like, for his position, I think they've started off very similarly. Like, he looks like a professional out there. That catch rate is awesome. He's very dependable, and I think he's just going to start heating up. So I like the 1-6 right here. These are two really good players. The 1-7, we go back into a little bit of disappointment territory. In 2022, it was Sky Moore. He was the wide receiver 132 at that point.
Pick.
That was tough. He was averaging 1.7 points per game at that point. Similarly, though, in 2023 is pretty disappointing. It was Zach Charbonnet at the 1-7. He's the RB 59 right now. He's got 162 yards, no touchdowns, only 8 catches for around 50 yards. It's disappointment on both ends this year, but kind of weird because it was different. Like Sky Moore, you and I liked Sky Moore a lot coming out of the draft, and then the landing spot was like, oh, cool. Like he's with Mahomes. Like this is a great
Oh
landing
no.
spot. That's what moved him up the boards for us. And it was kind of the opposite with Charbonnet. Like Charbonnet could have been the 1-4 or the 1-3 potentially if he lands in the right spot in a single QB league, but he lands in Seattle and people faded on him to the 1-7. And both guys not really going super hard for what you'd want out of your first round guys. Charbonnet's looked a little better, and he's gonna maybe start heating up. The split between him and Walker this week was really weird. He actually took a lot of it. I don't know what was going on with Walker. That's something we can dive into in a future episode.
Sure.
But
Well,
yes, go ahead.
are you getting into the 1-8?
I was about to, yeah.
I just think at this moment, just pausing and reflecting a bit on what you've said, if you do a little massaging and flipping, and you put Treylon Burks up against, your Quentin Johnston, and you give Addison and Olave a fair comparison, like, yeah, you really are, you really are getting a similar landscape as you go through these guys. So,
Yeah. It's kind of they moved around a bit, and I honestly want to start tracking this a little closer because I had some takeaways. It seems from this brief little research, it seems like the bigger receivers take a little longer to get going, like London, Burks, um, uh, Johnston,
Johnson.
JSN, even kind of on the edge there. He's a little bigger than, not really, but yeah, these bigger guys seem to take longer, and then the smaller, quicker guys are like taking off like a rocket. So I'd like to go back and kind of track the rookie drafts and see like if that kind of trend continues. But somebody like AJ Brown's gonna go in there and fuck that up. But that'd just be an interesting thought experiment. But yeah, you're right. If you move these picks around, you do kind of get the same amount of development. It seems like. But moving on to the 1-8, 2022 was weird because it was Jameson Williams, and we all knew he wasn't going to play, and so he didn't play. So he doesn't really count in this exercise. But it's kind of cool that he got paired up with Kendre Miller, who was the 1-8 in 2023, because Kendre hasn't really played all that much either. He's the RB 66 on the year. He only has 27 carries and 8 catches. So we had hurt Jameson Williams and buried on the depth chart Kendre Miller. Both guys were future investments, so it's interesting to see that, like, okay, now once we start hitting the 1-7, 1-8, we're reaching for guys that like we're pushing out into the future. So I just thought that was interesting, but not a ton to talk about with those two guys quite yet. The 1-9, this was an interesting one too. 2022 was Dameon Pierce. He was the RB 14 at the time. He was averaging 15.4 points a game. He had double-digit games from weeks 3 to 8. So he was just really consistent after the first 2 games. He had 3 touchdowns on the ground and 1 through the air, and 539 yards and 121 carries, which is the highest of anybody that I tracked over these past 2 years. So he was just getting all the usage. You flip that to 2023, also weirdly, the RB 14 on the dot is Devon Achane. And he's doing it a completely different way because he's only played a few games, but he's averaging 25.4 points per game. So he had 50 points in week 3, 460 yards on only 28 carries. So we've talked about it a lot with Achane. It's this unsustainable explosion. But both these guys were like relatively lower running backs that popped in the first round and have been going off. So I just thought that was interesting. They landed right around the 1-9.
So you're saying, okay, I'm trying to get in a pattern. Skip the 1-8, guys.
Yeah, trade out of the 1-7 and 1-8 apparently, but go for the 1-9.
Yeah, I'm in it.
All right. Speed through the last 3 guys here, or the last 6 guys, I guess. The 110, we had George Pickens in 2022, off to kind of a slow
Ooh.
start. 26 catches, 33, 338 yards and a touchdown. So not terrible, but he was the wide receiver 51. 2023, that pick went to Michael Mayer. So tight end 37 on the year. He's only averaging 4 points per game right now. One had flashes of brilliance in a struggling offense. The others looked good on a terrible offense when they decide to feature him. Maybe now that Josh McDaniels is gone, Michael Mayer can get a little more work. We'll see what's going on with that. But both these guys are kind of flashing, but are held down by their offenses, it seems like, which is interesting. Again, the comparisons keep lining up. Not really so much on this next one. The 111, 2022, it was James Cook. He only had 24 carries and one touchdown at that point at week 8 in 2022 is the RB63. In 2023, the 111 went for Anthony Richardson. He's the QB 29 by week 8. He's only played 3 healthy games. You guys have heard me talk about Richardson enough. He was explosive, 4 touchdowns on the ground already, 3 through the air, but just ended up getting hurt. And so Cook was an interesting guy. He didn't really get a lot of usage year 1. Seemed like it was a year 2 thing. Now they brought in Leonard Fournette, so I'm interested to see how that goes. But yeah, this was the weirdest one. The 111, again, this seems to be where people are taking shots for the guys they like or the guys that will fit their roster. So this was a pretty interesting one. And then finally, the 112 in 2022, it was Christian Watson, who was the wide receiver 114 on the year, only getting about 4.5 points. Hadn't had a double-digit game yet, only 12 targets, 8 catches for 52 yards. He was dealing with some injuries, though, but this should be kind of a blessing, or maybe that's not the right word, but something to look to for Quentin Johnston owners, because Watson caught 7 touchdowns over the last half of the season and kind of made his season up after getting out of those injuries. So maybe we can see a similar birth from Johnston. But at this point, Christian Watson hadn't been doing anything last year. Comparatively, in 2023, it was Zay Flowers at the 112, and he's the wide receiver 32, which doesn't sound great, but he has 61 targets, which is like 3rd on this list of guys that I've done, and he's only had 2 games with less than 10 points. His deal is that he's just been targeted a ton and hasn't converted those into scores, which could end up being a problem for him his entire career, and that could suck, and that's something we need to track. But as of now, he still looked great. He still looked like an NFL receiver. So I think I'm a Zay Flowers owner in most leagues now, and I'm very excited about it. But yeah, just kind of an interesting comparison, because again, even Christian Watson would fall into that like bigger guy role. I mean, he's quicker, but he's 6'4". So it's just kind of interesting. I want to maybe like do a deeper dive into this, maybe future episode or maybe during the off season, but I just thought I just wanted to do a little fun, quick comparison of the past 2 seasons. So
That's cool, man. I love it. Yeah, you forgot to say that Jonathan Mingo is the T. Higgins of this draft class.
there
Early
you go.
mid second round, but playing lights out. But that'll give me something to look forward to hearing you say in the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Now that was really cool. I mean, I love doing that kind of thought experiment and just like checking in on realistic expectations, because you get these guys first year and you're like, especially the back end of the second or the back end of the first round, there's so much disappointment and like so much hope baked into those picks and projections and it's not really a hot place, as far as satisfying results. So it's cool to reflect on it.
Yeah, you're very much hoping for the future when you get into those back picks, and which is unfortunate for somebody like me who's trying to do a rebuild, and I got all these seconds and early seconds and late first. But yeah, it's you got to kind of find some room back there and like get your guy for sure. But seems like, I mean, it makes sense. The farther down you get down the draft board, the less results you're gonna get. That kind of tracks.
Less certainty and more risk. So, all right, well, that's cool, man. I love rookies. So,
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
we spend a lot of time talking about them, so it's always nice to revisit the previous classes, because
Hmm.
it's easy to be like, hey, next wave, next crop here, but
Yeah. And
it's good to spend a little time on them.
yeah, I'm excited. And to spoil a little bit of next week, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the 2022 guys and see how they're doing in their sophomore season and kind of see where they're at comparatively to where they were last year. So that'll be another interesting little thought experiment. But without further ado, let's get into what I stepped on of yours last week and dig into some wide receiver numbers.
Wide receiver numbers. All right, if you really want to, we can do it. So yeah, last week, if you were with us, it was a lot of talk about it's kind of like advanced statistics, a lot of PFF type grinding on things, because what happens is, every year in the off season we look back, and right now we know what's going on. It's pretty clear who's doing well. They got their rankings and the blow up games and all sorts of stuff. But we always look back, and we're looking at like, hey, yards per route run, or missed tackles forced, and these kind of statistics get a lot of attention in the off season. So I thought it'd be a good time, kind of halfway here, to just review, take a look at how the top guys are doing in these categories, and then see if there are some surprising people that are, putting together some good numbers under the radar, or that you hadn't really thought about. So these can be guys to get in because you're excited, because they have a big potential, or just kind of something to be aware of. I don't know, easier trade targets than your high end guys, and just see what's up. So without further delay, I'm just going to mention real quick that I did a minimum of 30 targets for the wide receivers here, just to keep it clean. You got guys with 7 targets that have outstanding A dot and stuff like that, but we're keeping it to semi-relevant guys. Yeah, so with that in mind, I'm going to start with what seems to be a not really relevant stat, with the slot percentage.
Mm,
Um, and so, slot percentage, I'm looking at like wide receivers that are pretty relevant. And there's only one guy in the top 10 wide receivers that has a top 10 slot percentage, if that makes sense. And that's Adam Thielen.
okay.
He's a wide receiver 8, and he's 10th in slot snap percentage at 72. So it kind of makes you wonder if that's like a relevant thing. Do you want your wide receivers really living in the slot or not? Um, and if you go beyond the percentage and look at like pure snap counts, it gets a little more optimistic. We've got 3 of our top 10 guys living in that top 10 snaps in the slot. And that's you got Thielen, who's third in snaps. And then you got CD Lamb and Keenan Allen are also in the top 10. So
Okay.
they're getting a lot done from the slot. So that's something to look at. I just, if you see, there's not a ton to get into on the slot thing. It's just something to keep an eye on. If you got a guy line up in the slot a lot, he better be kicking ass. Otherwise, he might not be producing for you. Just for the record, Tyler Boyd, 89% is the number one guy
Mm,
in the league. But if you look at your top 3 wide receivers, which is Tyreek, Stephon Diggs, and AJ Brown, they're all under like 36% slot snaps. So if you're looking for someone elite, might not be the place to find him. But as far as like the ADOT, your average depth of
oh,
target.
do you want me to do the
Oh
rookie
yeah,
slot
shit,
percentage?
man. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
No,
Yeah,
you're good.
roll it.
You're good. So yeah, real quickly, I just wanted to throw out the rookie leaders in slot percentage. We are a dynasty podcast after all. So right now, number one is Demario Douglas, with 87%. And then number two is Josh Downs with 84%. So kind of like what you're talking about. If he's not crushing it in the slot, like maybe he can't be useful, which Josh Downs really is. He's having a good season there. And then number three is Jaden Reed with 76%. So it does seem like we found like these 3 guys are going to be slot receivers. And it really just depends on if those offenses are going to feature them enough.
Yeah. I just don't know what to say about the slot percentage. I think we just accept it and move on. I'm ready
That's
to move
fair.
on. But I will be including rookie stats as we go forward. So
Okay.
as far as the A dot goes, um, so just looking at our guys that are doing well and guys with the top 10 A dot that are super successful. As far as fantasy production, like Mike Evans, he's
Mm,
tied for ninth and he's the wide receiver 14. So then a lot of your big A dot guys aren't really heavy volume
mm,
producers, is basically the long short of it. But they're still pretty relevant. As far as name value, you've got your number one, Rashid Shaheed.
mm.
Yeah, so he's heating up. He's got 18.2 on the ADOT, which is that's pretty healthy, man. I'll take that every day. Your number two guy is Michael Wilson. So you probably gonna bring him up, I assume. With 15.2, the Cardinals. Oh, he's number three. And then DeAndre Hopkins is number two with
Mm.
15.5. And I think like I was doing a little research and he went from like sixth to third
I
just
was
in
about
that
to
one
say
Will Levis
with
game.
Levis going off last week. Oh, I guess, man, I should have. Not that I guess Levis wouldn't have been talked about in this episode. He's not a first round pick, but yeah, that was crazy. Levis going off like that.
That was cool. Yeah, I've got a little bit of it baked in throughout.
Okay,
But
nice,
then George Pickens and Amari Cooper are also doing pretty well. They were like around right around 14 and a half on the A dot. So
gotcha.
yeah, that's your A dot rundown.
Okay. Yeah. So for the rookies, I didn't put the same 30 target limit on it. I did add a target limit later and we'll get into it, but for the ADA, I didn't. So right now, kind of exactly what you're saying. And it's these guys that aren't producing a ton, but are just kind of the deep threat of the offense. So we had Jalen Hyatt at 23.4 as number one for the rookies. Marvin Mims was number two at 21.5. And then, as you said, Michael Wilson was third with 15.2. I think it was. And so, yeah, pretty interesting. Michael Wilson seems to be the most consistent producer of that group so far. So,
Yeah, I like Michael Wilson. He's the wide receiver 47 on the year, but that's pretty good
mhm.
considering the I don't know, the pedigree and the team he's on.
Yeah,
We'll see
yeah,
how it goes without Dobbs over there. Who
mm.
knows?
Yeah. What is the
So
deal there?
dude, that's fun, right? I love it. So getting into our next stat. Ooh, a little hot mic there. I'm doing the yards per reception. And this one, I mean, this one has some clout to it. Just looking at your number one. Well, Tyreek is doing pretty good. He's like sixth, on this
Mhm.
list with his 16.6. But Rashid Shaheed is winning. He's at 20.8. So congratulations to him. And then your number two guy is George Pickens, so
Hmm.
18.6. So there's still hope on the Pickens train. I think a lot of hope actually. And
Yeah, he
then
looks good.
yeah, man. Brandon Ayuk is at 17.7.
Mm.
So he's rounded out, finished out your top five guys. You got Nico Collins and then Josh Reynolds. So
Mm.
so that's pretty solid. And I didn't really talk about the A dot for the top three guys, but they're all around like 11 to 13.
Gotcha.
But their yards per reception are kind of varied. Tyreek's at 16.6, so he's right there with those top guys. And then AJ Brown is 15.7, and then Stefan is 11.7.
Gotcha.
So not really an indicator of like success. It's really volume along with yards per reception. But you're definitely going to be more successful if you're making the most of your targets. So
Yeah, that
uh,
stands to reason for sure.
for sure.
So the yards per reception leaders for the rookies, similar names to the A dot. We've got Marvin Mims at one with 22.4, Jalen Hyatt at two, at 21.7, unless I don't have it updated from last week. And then three is Michael Wilson at 16. So
Yeah, that's what I'm
same
saying,
names.
man. You
Just
start
flip
seeing these
Hyatt and
popping up.
Mims. Marms? What an idiot.
Marms.
Marms.
I hope there's a Marms out there. So one day that's a fun name. I just
That'd
want
be
to say
fun.
Marms. Um,
Marms
so next up, we got the yards after the catch per
mm,
reception.
per reception.
Yeah, buddy. So this is another one where it's this is an indication of some pretty solid performances, but it's not necessarily what the elite guys are up to. Actually, surprisingly, Rasheed Rice,
Hmm.
number one at 8.3. Nico Collins, dude, number two, 7.9. And then
Nice.
Debo Samuels is 7.8.
Mm,
And to round out your top five, George Pickens is in the house again. And then DJ Moore is also part
gotcha.
of it. So that's pretty cool. Tyreek's actually sixth on this list again. So that's not bad. When the wide receiver one is flirting with this list, he's at 6.3 there.
Hmm.
And yeah, Stefan's 3.2, so not a lot of yards after the catch. And then AJ Brown's right under five. So
Gotcha.
that's pretty good. Also, you got like Jamar Chase and DJ Moore are in the top five in this
Mm,
category, or the top 10 in this category as well.
gotcha.
So, it does translate a little more to success.
Yeah. And so two of the names on this for the rookies then are going to be intriguing because like you said, Rasheed Rice 8.3, I think that's good. I still don't know that I buy him as like a one in KC, but like he's putting up good numbers and is kind of right in line with these guys. Number two was Marvin Mims. He just gets all those deep targets and like, but long bomb touchdowns. But number three was JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigbo with six right on the nose. So that was pretty interesting to see. I like that out of him. I know he had the little he had the game winning touchdown this week on like a little swing thing. So yeah, cool to see.
Yeah, it's feisty, dude. Those are the feisty guys. Um, okay, and then next up we've got the yards per route run. And
Mm,
this has been like, kind of a long-standing recognized indicator of success.
mm-hmm.
It's all the big dogs are usually kicking pretty hard on this list. And it goes to show that number one is Tyreek. So
Mm,
4.6 or 4.26 yards per route run. That's pretty substantial when you consider that's a whole yard above the number two guy with Brandon Ayuk at
mm.
3.23. Number three is AJ Brown, right? So way to be
Big dogs.
3.13. Yeah, huge, huge dogs. And then to round out your top five, Nico Collins is on this again. And
Nice.
then Justin Jefferson,
Mm.
even though he's not out there playing, he's still yards per route run representing. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, and so this was the one that I put a 20 target limit on it for the rookies just because I wanted to really see like who is doing this. And it took Marvin Mims off being the top, but just so you know, he is if you don't put that 20 target cap. But number one is Puka Nakua with 2.81 yards per route run, which is pretty good. Number two was Rasheed Rice actually. So that's a good stat to tag with the yards after catch per reception. And then Tank Dell actually was number three. So that was pretty interesting. I mean, he's been hurt and that one's been kind of weird, but he was really producing when he was healthy for them.
oh yeah, man, that's nice. Take Dell, gotta love it. I'm gonna roll into contested catches.
Yeah.
So, just like the number of contested catches is basically what I'm looking at for this straight up. It's tied for number one between DJ Moore and AJ Brown at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's a pretty healthy number. And then it's just a huge tie after that. I mean, Amon Ross, and let's see, Stephon Diggs has eight and then Amon Ra has nine. But then after that, there's like a huge tie between Michael Thomas and Mike Evans. So they're all doing pretty well. No one's got a ton of them. I like the DJ Moore and AJ Brown 11. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
I'll
that's really
call
good.
that substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But then I'm just going to do a special call out for the contested catch percentage
Hmm.
to Jacoby Myers for being the only guy with double digit contested catch
Nice.
targets with 70% or greater in that category. So he's doing the hard work. It was paying off big time, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. For the contested catches, we actually have a three-way tie for the rookies.
Okay.
All of these guys only have five contested catches, varying percentages. But we had Puka Nakua, Jordan Addison, and Jake Bobo. Um,
Big Bobo.
yeah, he's got a contested catch rate of 100%, actually, 5 for 5.
Wow, that's
So
pretty
it's
good.
pretty good going up there and getting it. We haven't talked a lot about Jake Bobo on this podcast. Probably should have. With he's doing all right, but yeah, I just thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, not a ton. I mean, like I said, the number one guys only have five. Michael Wilson would have, if you count those three as one, Michael Wilson would have been two, and Mingo would have been three. So,
Hey. Yeah, now this is really something you'll look at after the season. You know,
hmm
it's hard to pick these numbers up at the midpoint, but when it
hmm
comes to the end of it, you'll really see some guys that are making big plays and keeping drives rolling, which is only going to get them more involved in their offense. So with that, we'll just roll into the biggest indication of how involved these guys are with the straight up target numbers.
hmm.
Yeah, number one is Stefan Diggs, so 88.
Woof.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good. Um, Number two is the tie at 84 between Tyreek and Puka Nakoa. So
hmm
whatever that's worth. And then to round out your top five, you got AJ Brown and Jamar Chase. So I mean, this you know what it is. These guys are all being heavily featured in their offenses, and there's no need to round back to the top three because they're included in the conversation. So
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so for the rookies, you mentioned Puka Nakua. He was number one with 84. There's a large gap for number two, but number two is Zay Flowers with 59, which is different than Pro Football Reference and PFF have different target numbers. I've always thought that was interesting. I don't know like where PFF cuts it off because PFF always has less
yeah, I
than
think
Pro Football.
they must not count like throwaways or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's got to be something like that. But so for intents and purposes, I used Pro Football Reference earlier, apparently. So just that's the disparity. But 59 for Zay Flowers and then 53 for Josh Downs. So he's
Okay.
number three. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. See, this is why we talked about this stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know. And you know, touchdowns obviously make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about number one, it's Tyreek with 8. So that's a healthy number, man. That's going to keep you in the number one position. Stefan's got 6,
Mm-hmm.
which ties him for third with a surprising number here. Cortland Sutton,
Hmm.
whatever. That's weird. But then don't forget number 2 on the list is Jordan Addison with 7.
Hey.
Like what are we doing here? And I'm not even talking about the 20-way tie for guys that have 5, so they can exist.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so you mentioned Jordan Addison's the number one guy there. There's a two-person tie for number two. Both of these guys only have three, so they're four behind Addison. But Jaden Reed and Rasheed Rice both have three. And
Okay.
then similarly to you, there's like 8, 9 guys that all have two. So I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
But it's like JSN, Tank Dell, Puka, people like that, Josh Downs.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're talking about guys with 5, like, yeah, it's like AJ Brown, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Jacoby Myers, let's see, Gabe Davis,
He's
Romeo
having a good
Dobbs.
year.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Dobbs, let's go.
I know, man. So I mean,
Uh,
with that, like that is the wide receiver rundown per category. But I wanted to circle back and just talk about guys that have multiple hits on some of these categories. that we might not be thinking about so much, and just give them a little bit of a spotlight. Like I'll just start at the top. Brandon Ayuk hit the top three in yards per reception and yards per route run. So, healthy. I know we're all pretty pumped about him. Um, but another guy doing pretty solid here is going to be George Pickens, dude. Like A dot,
Yeah.
yards per route run, yards after the catch, per reception. He's top five in all of those. So he's just solid. He's been a good contributor. Um, for sure. Rashid Shaheed, we kind of wrap that together with the A dot and the yards per reception. Those go together pretty well.
Yeah.
But I got to give Nico some respect, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yards per route run, yards after the catch per reception in, and just pure yards per reception. He's doing well, top five in those three. So
Yeah.
I'm, gotta, pat these dudes on the. I don't know. Is Rashid Shaheed still available? If you're rostering him, you getting out from under him, or are you holding him on?
I would trade him for sure. I mean, I think he's cool and he's a nifty little player. I don't know that he's going to be consistent. So I would trade him, especially like I have him in for the bell and I'm just trying to acquire picks at that point. So yeah, I would definitely ship him out there, but I wouldn't be shocked to hold on to him. I mean, they use him a lot and the Saints are weird. I mean, goddamn Taysom Hill is the
Dude,
tight end
don't even.
two since week 6 or some shit. So
Not
I don't know,
even.
man.
I don't. He doesn't count as a tight end on my rankings here, apparently,
Good. He shouldn't.
because he doesn't have any receiving stats. So that'd be why. I don't
That
know.
would do
Call
it.
me
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, Hell of a segue, man. We're doing pass catchers, so gotta get into tight ends, man.
Yeah.
Just just going for it. I'm gonna go ahead and just say that slot percentage has a little more bearing in this category.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and go through the slot guys. Um, yeah, so Mark Andrews, number one at the 81% there. And then you've got Kyle Pitts as second with 60%. And Johnny Smith has 55.5% in the slot, like
Of
on the
course.
same team as Kyle Pitts with the Falcons. So that's just something strange to think about. Zach Ertz and Evan Ingram round out your top five. So that those make sense quite a bit. Evan Ingram's really crushing it this year. Um, but your top three guys, so you got Kelsey, Hawkinson, and Laporta. Kelsey's about 54, Hawkinson's 34, and then Laporta is really 27%. So
Hmm.
like some good work out of the inline guys there. Love to see that. Um, so yeah, do you want to hit the rookies? The
Yeah, I
second
mean,
two
it's gonna be
remaining.
I'm gonna leave out everybody other than like the main four guys. So going in slot percentage, Dalton Kincaid is 51%. Sitting there. I'm interested to see if that goes down with Knox being out. Um, or what the deal is there. But Luke Musgrave was actually two with 43%. And then Laporta was three. So
Okay. Um, on this one, this is a category I didn't hit on the wideouts. It's the catch rate.
mm,
I think that's pretty important for tight ends, just because they're not always traditionally pass catchers.
mhm.
Um, sorry, I'll tell you about the text I just read eventually. It's cracking me up. But all right, so they're not always traditionally pass catchers, but as they become more reliable, they become more utilized. So
Hmm.
I'm keeping an eye on this stat. And number one, dude, is Dalton Kincaid
Yep.
at 90.9. Fun fact, I ran these stats last week, and at that point, he had caught all but one of his target. He
Yeah.
didn't fare as consistently last week, so it dropped him down from what would have been like 94% down to 91%. So
Hmm. Yeah, that's
that's all
wild.
good.
Yeah.
But like shocking, Evan Ingram, 86%. He's being really used in that offense, and it's because he's just sure-handed, dude.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. But the real shocker for me, I guess, is Cole Kmet is camping in number three at 83%.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, weird number. And then your top five, just rounded out, is going to be Travis Kelsey and Johnny Smith. What are we doing with the Johnny Smith stuff, man? Um,
Hey,
good for him.
if yeah, you should have picked him up. I've used him a couple weeks. He helped me out. I mean, that team sucks, so I haven't really gotten anywhere with it. But yeah, they keep using him, so you might as well too. Again, interesting to see how that'll go with Heineke coming in.
True.
But getting into the reception percentage for the tight ends, Kincaid, you pointed out 90% or 91% basically, which is incredible. That was awesome. Luke Musgrave is sitting at 77.4%, which I'd like to see like his true catch percentage or whatever. Like if you take away the uncatchable balls, because I feel like it might be a little higher. And unless does that already do that in this? I don't think it
I think
does. Does it?
PFF, I think, does, but it's like
Does
percent of catch targets.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So then, yeah, but it's still pretty decent. Like it's not terrible. And then number three for the rookies was Sam Laporta with 73%.
Yeah, and Sam Laporta is the number three guy in the tight end rankings right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hawkinson's number two, and he's right at 80%, like just under Travis Kelsey, just outside the top five. So it's a good thing to catch the damn ball when it's thrown your way, at
I can
least four out of
imagine.
five times. Okay, so getting into A dot for these fellas, Kyle Pitts, number one. It's good to
Mm.
say his name in a positive light. He's got 11.7 on that. Number two, we're looking at George Kittle, so kind of makes sense. He's really coming on strong right now. And then Hunter Henry is surprising number three with the 9.1. So, like, you look at these teams, they really, I mean, these are guys that don't have a wide spread of wide receivers that are
Hmm.
kicking ass. So they're functioning in a hybrid role.
Gotcha. Yeah. Interestingly though, Michael Mayer would be the first rookie there who does
Ooh,
have a pretty decent pair of receivers over in Vegas. So that's an interesting one. He's got 8.9. After that, we've got Sam Laporta at 6.9 and then Luke Musgrave at 6.4.
nice. And so those are all pretty solid numbers. Getting into the yards per reception, we got Kittle number one, 13.8. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'd
Right on
say.
some of those, wideouts a little bit. But number two was Mark Andrews, which good to hear his name again. He's not as popular on this segment as I thought he might be. And then third is Kyle Pitts. So Kyle Pitts
Gotcha.
doing it again with with the A dot comes high yards per reception. So
Yeah. So going into the rookies real quick, Michael Mayer makes another appearance on the list, which he's kind of hit or miss there, but he was number one at 6.3. And then we've got Luke Musgrave number two and Laporta number three.
nice. All right. So then you got yards after the catch per reception. David Njoku is leading the way on this one with 8.7. So for those Njoku truthers, 5, 6 years, you might be right. It might work out. Number three is Evan Ingram, hot name. And then there's a tie for number third. And that's going to be George Kittle and Dallas Goddard.
Gotcha. And I think I messed up because last we were doing yards per reception last, right? Not yards.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So I messed that up. So what I
Oh,
read was the yards after catch per reception numbers for the rookies last time. So that was um Michael Mayer 6.3, Luke Musgrave 4.8, Sam Laporta 4.2. But for
okay.
yards per reception, that is Michael Mayer number one at 13 and a half, Sam Laporta number two at 10, and Dalton Kincaid number three at 8.6.
Okay. All
So
right. I
just
like
to
the clarification.
fix that.
Yeah, rewind it and listen to it three
Yeah,
times and you'll know.
then you'll
You'll get
figure it
it
out.
all. You'll be 100% on the ball, just like us.
Yeah.
Um, so getting into the yards per route run, the man himself, Travis Kelsey, is leading this at the 2.67.
Mm.
Second up is Trey McBride. So that's a
Hey,
kind of a really surprising name at 2.09. And right at two is George Kittle, hitting the third place there. So
gotcha. Slightly behind him for the rookies is Sam Laporta at 1.76. And then the next name we care about would be Dalton Kincaid at 1.28 for number two. And then number three is Michael Mayer at 1.1.
point one. Oof, that's a low one. If you compare that to some of the wideouts where it's like,
Yeah,
never mind.
it's tough.
So getting the contested catch, I did do percentage for just a couple of guys. Johnny Smith is 4 for 4,
Nice.
and David Njoku is 4 for 5.
Okay.
So those are like a little bit higher numbers. But then the guys who are actually doing better than most with the contested catch numbers, Sam Laporta, number one with 7, and then TJ Hawkinson, number two with 5. After that, it just gets spread pretty wide.
Gotcha. Yeah, like you mentioned, Sam Laporta's caught 10 out of 7, so he's sitting there at 70% for his. But for the rookie tight ends, there's not much else going on. Michael Mayer has 3 of 5. So he's sitting at 60%. And then Dalton Kincaid has 1 of 2. And then Luke Musgrave is 3 misses for 1 catch. So like he's
Uh,
at 33%. So
yeah, it's time. 1 out of 3 is not bad. They can't hold that against the guy. But just getting to the targets. Hey man, top three guys are the top three guys. Travis Kelce at 67, TJ Hawkinson 66, Sam Laporta 59, and that's actually a tie at Evan Ingram, also 59.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you mentioned it. Sam Laporta, 59. Kincaid's number 2, 33. And then Musgrave is number 3 at 31. So they're kind of right in the same line.
Okay, sweet. Touchdown numbers, 6 for Mark Andrews, pretty good. And then 4 a piece for Kelsey and Laporta.
Yep. So yeah, first of all, yeah, go Mark Andrews, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Let's go. Laporta at number 1, and then honestly everybody else is tied at 2 for with 1, and it's not even the names you'd think because only Dalton Kincaid has 1 of the guys we've been talking about. The other ones are Brenton Strange, Luke Schoonmaker, and Josh Wiley. So Musgrave doesn't have 1, Michael Mayer doesn't have 1.
Yeah, they got time. So yeah, just to recap, the guys that are hitting multiple categories in the top 5 in multiple categories. Mark Andrews, give him some respect. We didn't shout his name too much, but he is top 5 in A dot, slot percentage, yards per reception, and yards per route run. George Kittle also has 4 categories of success: A dot, yards per reception, yards after the catch, and then yards per route run. Evan Ingram doing well with 3 of these specialized ones. It's catch percentage, slot percentage, and yards after the catch. Let's see. Kyle Pitts, slot percentage, A dot, yards per catch, and Johnny Smith. Wow. Slot percentage, yards per reception, yards after the catch per reception, and give him the 4 for 4 on the 100% contested catch percentage.
Janu. I mean, he's a good player. He always has been.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved him in Tennessee, man. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Delaney Walker's second
Yeah.
coming, but
Never
it took a long
never really
time.
materialized.
Hmm.
So.
So that's it. I mean, that's the pass catchers. Sticking a fork in the advanced stats, I could see why we wait for the off season. It's a lot to chew on right there.
It's a
So
meaty episode for sure.
absolutely. So I'm just going to touch on our matchup predictions that I've been doing with the multi TD guys and the double digit targets. It's been a lot of fun to track this. Last week, I was pumped. There were like 9 games that had optimal matchups for teams that were allowing it, facing teams that were producing it. And I may have said that like 6 out of the 9 were going to be successful. It shook out a little differently than that. I would say 5 or 6 made it, but it was like New Orleans had multiple touchdown scores against Indianapolis, but it was two of them, So if you count Alvin Kamara and Taysom doing that, then
Then you
maybe
got
my
six.
prediction was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo definitely had the double-digit targets up against Tampa Bay. That was cool. Khalil Shakir had a great game, and
Yeah, he
like
did.
Gabe Davis was cooking. So that was fun. Um, yeah, Baltimore and Arizona, there was double digits going on all over the place there. Some multi TDs as well, and then I did pretty well. Yeah, Cincinnati was putting up double digit targets all over the 49ers. So whatever, toot my own horn. We told you to check back in, and we did. This week, it's not as fun. It's not as flashy. There's literally only one matchup that really fits the bill as far as exciting, like teams allowing it, teams producing it, and just goes to show you that the most exciting matchup is going to be the Colts and the Panthers,
Oh,
and I can tell you exactly why. Um, because if you're following along with us and looking at the multiple touchdowns allowed category, Indianapolis has given up six such games. Okay, the Cardinals or the Carolina Panthers have given up six such games. So these guys are leading the league in allowing these multiple touchdown games against them. Uh, both of them, it's the Indianapolis is doing it on the ground three times. Um, and yeah, the Panthers are doing it only twice as far as on the ground. So they got a whole mix. You can just walk in and stomp all over them. So I'm looking for these teams to really just run all over each other. I wouldn't be surprised if, Zach Moss had two touchdowns, or hopefully Jonathan
Jonathan
Taylor
Taylor, that'd
has
be
two
nice.
touchdowns. Um, but it's kind of wonky, man. I don't know. So I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of games that are going to be big clashes. The Eagles come to mind, like they're doing double digit target games all over the place, and then they're allowing it as well. So they're up against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys aren't really doing double digit games. But if they keep rolling through CD Lamb like they did last week, I
Hey
could
yo,
see it going. So that's going to be exciting. The Bills and the Bengals are playing. Like this is going to be a great game. Neither squad is really popping off on the multiple touchdown category, and neither team are really allowing hyper targeted players, but both teams are producing hyper targeted players. So something's got to give in that matchup. I think the Chargers and the Jets probably going to be a cool one too. And these are the big ticket games that don't have like the sweet equation that I'm looking for, but like the Jets defense, it's like an immovable force, and then the Chargers offense, it's finally like started to really blossom.
hmm
So that's going to be a really fun clash. I think we're going to have to see something happen there. Also, the Jets are putting up double digit targets of late, and the Chargers are allowing it. So maybe it's an opportunity for their offense to take another step up. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun week. There's a lot of good matchups, but none of them hit my metrics. I'm looking for teams that are allowing it like at least 50% of the time, or producing it at least 50% of the time, playing up against their complement in such categories. And it's not really how this week fell. So I'm not going to dredge through it too much. Just going to
That's
come back
fair.
and hope for some sweet matchups next week.
Well, sorry, some jerk talked too long last week and kind of ate up your moment of shine there. So
Are you
hopefully
talking
we
about
get
me? He's talking about me.
hopefully we can get some better matchups for you next time. But that's still some spicy stuff, man. Yeah, that Chargers Jets game should be really, really interesting, especially with the Chargers really needing Quentin Johnson to get going and him going up against that defense. But yeah,
Ugh, of
as always, man, thank you for that. You got anything
course.
else?
No, no, man, I made nuts for all these matchups. I'm just thinking of what's about to happen in Frankfurt, man. I'm not
Oh.
really looking forward to it. Miami, Miami, Miami. Take it easy on
Yeah,
my boys.
that could get spicy. That'll be an
Mhm.
interesting game. Well, on that note, then, we've been Rough Draft Research. You've been the audience, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
I took a lease out on your heart.